Akwaba means welcome in Ghana, and I am welcoming you to today's edition of Practical Guide to Research with Awaah. Practical Guide to Research with Awaah. Ladies and gentlemen, sometimes it can be very painful when you put in a lot of efforts to write a manuscript intended to be published, and then the journal sends you a reject letter. Reject. Yes, so today we're going to look at minimizing rejects for article publications. Minimizing rejects for article publications. So what do we do to minimize reject of the manuscripts that we intend to publish? One, read the instruction of the journal and pay attention to its scope, word limits, and referencing style. Read the manuscript of the journal and pay attention to its scope, word limits, and referencing style. What do we mean? Let's just take an example that you have a journal that you want to submit to. So let's say, for instance, I don't know, Journal of Economic and Administrative Sciences. This is where you intend sending your manuscript to. It is proper that you read about their scope. Usually you would find it here at overview. You see aims and objectives. So supply chain management, human resource management. So if you have a paper and it has to do with chemistry, clearly this journal doesn't support your manuscript. So you'll be wasting your time when you send it here. There are other issues related to word limits. Let's see outer guidelines. Before submitting, all of these are important. You have to carefully peruse all of these so that you are sure that what you are sending out. So you see, article length and word count. Articles should be between 3,000 and 8,000 words in length. So if you send a manuscript that is about 9,000 to 10,000 words, automatically you would have played yourself out of the game. So tendencies are that you would get a desk reject. Let's see a lot of things, but let's see if we can find anything about referencing. Tables, supplementary files. Referencing. All references in your manuscript might be formatted using one of the recognized Harvard styles. You are welcome to use the Harvard style Emerald has adapted. Now, recall that it's not just the generic Harvard style, but that which Emerald has adapted. So you may have to go back and then see what others have used, or you just look at it here, Emerald's Harvard referencing style. So they tell you exactly how they want their referencing to be done. So you could have a good manuscript, but have referenced it in APA. In that instance, it doesn't fit in here because you are departing from their style. Okay, so let's go to number 2. Read the reviewer guide of the journal on their expectation of your manuscript. So sometimes you are taking your journal to a Sage journal, an Elsevier journal, an Emerald journal, MDPI journal, etc., etc. They have a marking scheme, ladies and gentlemen. They call that the reviewer guide. So some of you watching me are already reviewers, so you know that when journals send their manuscripts to you for review, they usually will add that guide. And for you who intends to publish in that particular journal, it's prudent for you to find out what the journal guide says or what the marking scheme is before you submit. In that way, you would align your manuscript to the specific demands of the journal. For the purposes of this video, I took the issue of Emerald, what the marking scheme or the reviewer guide is. So how do you get this? If you are a reviewer from Emerald, it can automatically, when they are sending you a manuscript, you can get this. You could also get it from faculty. You could also write to Emerald asking for the reviewer guide. And if you are going to Springer, you could follow those same processes. You may be fortunate, a colleague in the university may be a reviewer for any of them, and then you could also ask for the guide from him or her. So what Emerald requires of you is that your manuscript should be original. So what they'll be asking the person who will review your manuscript is, does the paper contain new and significant information adequate to justify publication? In that instance, you as a writer must ensure that your study is novel. There must be something original in it, which will meet this requirement so that the reviewer can take a yes for you. Because a no would mean that there's an issue in there and may come back with a revision or a total reject. Relationship to literature. Does the paper demonstrate an adequate understanding of the relevant literature in the field and cite an appropriate range of literature sources? Is any significant work ignored? Now, when you are looking at issues of, I take for instance, the cultural techno-contextual approach, and you do not cite persons such as Okebukola, clearly you have left out some significant work in the field, or you have ignored some significant work in what? The field. Any reviewer who would who is reviewing your work on the cultural techno-contextual approach and does not see Okebukola in it may just put it aside, because he is the founder, he's the person who brought about the cultural techno-contextual approach. So clearly, your literature, you've got to do it well. The earlier part is that the paper demonstrates an adequate understanding of the relevant literature in the field and cite an appropriate range of literature sources. So clearly, so again, using the cultural techno-contextual approach, if your study would not have demonstrated adequate understanding of the relevant literature in the field and cite an appropriate range of literature sources. If you don't talk about researchers like Awaah, myself, you don't talk about Agbanimu, you don't talk about Debussy, you don't talk about Beleye and a host of others. So traditionally, every piece of writing has literature sources that you have to draw from. And if your literature sources do not demonstrate an adequate understanding of the literature under review, then tendencies are that your work will not pass. Methodology. Is the paper's argument built on an appropriate base of theory, concepts, or other ideas? Has the research or equivalent intellectual work on which the paper is based been well designed? Are the methods employed appropriate? So you need to ensure that your methodology is consistent with the kind of research you are conducting. Results. Are results presented clearly and analyzed appropriately? Do the conclusions adequately tie together the other elements of the paper? So it's not enough to present your results, but it should be presented clearly and analyzed appropriately. Appropriate analysis here would mean tying your findings to the literature you have reviewed and also theory. Do the conclusions adequately tie together the other elements of the paper? And if you are concluding, the concluding shouldn't just be your personal opinions. It should flow from the objective of the research, the data, the data you have analyzed, and then also the literature you have reviewed. You must ask yourself in writing, whilst writing, whether you have met all of these practical and or research implications. Does the paper identify clearly any implications for practice and of future research? So here the question is, you do not write papers just because you want promotion or because you want to be known or because others are publishing. You write to solve real life problems. So the paper that you write, practical implications, The question is, how does it solve real life problems? You have to tell us that in your manuscripts, in your manuscript. And also, are there significant gaps that are left out that future researchers would want to build on? You have to clearly indicate that in your manuscript. Are there implications consistent with the findings and conclusions of the paper? You need to tell us the implications of your study based on the findings of your paper and then the literature. Quality of communication. Does the paper clearly express its case, measured against the technical language of the field and the expected knowledge of the journal's readership? Has attention been paid to the clarity of expression and readability, such as sentence structure, jargon use, acronyms, etc., etc.? So here, clearly you may have very brilliant ideas, but if you don't present them in a sequential manner that would guide understanding, then it becomes problematic. Here, usually the recommendations are that you get somebody to do a second proofread of it for you. But contextualizing this, there are issues of trust. There are instances where you send out your manuscript for a colleague to read by the time you know he has published it. So caution should be noted when adhering to this part of it. Reproducible research, if appropriate, is sufficient information, potentially including data and software, provided to reproduce the results, and are the corresponding data sets formally cited? Yeah, so whilst you come out with your study, ladies and gentlemen, it is to be understood that the procedures that you went through for the study, others should also be able to take it in other parts of the world or even within your own region, and then reproduce it, not exactly yours, but follow the steps to reproduce another set of knowledge. The question is, have you done your work in a manner which allows for reproducibility? Let's see whether we've left out anything here. Read the instructions of the journal and pay attention to its scope, word limits, and referencing style that we have seen. Read the reviewer guide of the journal on their expectations of your manuscript. We have looked at that using an Emerald journal. Adhere to the requirements of points 1 and 2 in preparing your manuscript. We've seen that already. Get a subject area review of the manuscript from a colleague. Trust is needed. You may give it to somebody and the person publishes it without you. Get help on grammar either from a software or from an academic proof reading professional. Yes, so you would realize that in our presentation, we saw quality of communication. So clearly, if you don't have enhanced grammar relative to the field of study, is just not English. There are key terminologies that are related to your field. So there is need that you get a professional proofreader or a grammar software. Usually I use Grammarly Premium because it does good work for me. I am very happy being with using them over time. Now, when you are done with all of this, you can now submit your manuscript. And ladies and gentlemen, when you do this, tendencies that your manuscript will go at least through Dex reject. It will escape Dex reject, and then at least it will go to reviewers to give you their comments. And likely you are going to get a minor or major revision. I hope this video has been helpful, and I'll see you again on yet another edition of Practical Guide to Research.